welcome this evening. We're going to be talking about tonight metabolism and metabolic pathways that we utilize supplementation to aid. Okay? When we talk about metabolism, remember in the body there are a couple of building processes and breakdown processes. When you think about anabolic steroids, for example, anabolism in the body builds, whereas catabolism actually breaks down. Metabolism is the means by which we produce energy by breaking down fuels in the system. In our bodies we use three types of fuels, and those three types of fuels are actually what we eat and then convert into energy with oxygen, actually then creates ATP or energy for us. So in our body, the primary form of energy is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Fuels in our body are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And the fascinating thing of that is the highest form of storage, is the greatest storage molecule as far as calories go, is, which of the three? Fats. Okay? So when we exercise, we really want to be burning fat. Once we've gone from aerobic to anaerobic, so aerobic being with oxygen and we're burning fats, to anaerobic, we're no longer burning fats with oxygen, so we no longer utilize fats. Now we start to use other sources of energy, and so that breakdown process or catabolism becomes now potentially even breaking down of our muscles. So we end up building waste products called lactic acid. How many of you ever had cramps because you have lactic acid buildup? Yes, all of us, right? If you've worked out and you've exceeded that metabolic threshold where you're in an energy producing with an aerobic energy producing threshold, now you're starting to break things down faster. So that mile 10 of the marathon, when you start cramping up, okay, you've exceeded those metabolic pathways that now are not efficiently producing energy, and the body says, whoa, can't keep up. Heart and lungs are unable now to produce enough oxygen and bypass or removing of waste, the carbon dioxide. So here's the neat thing. As the body breaks down these energy sources to produce energy, ATP, it actually creates for us water and carbon dioxide. So that's what we're breathing out. And that breakdown byproduct then, including water, can be exhaled, sweated off, or voided in urine or bowel. When we look at this also though, isn't it amazing? That molecule is pure. It can actually be utilized also for hydrating the cells if they're efficient. So the more efficient the membranes of the cells are, the more efficient these exchanges occur, and we actually get the energy in with the oxygen, and that's what we start to look at then. Inside of the cell is the big nucleus. Remember Nacho Libre? And within the man you find the nucleus. Within the cell you actually find the nucleus, okay? And in this nucleus then has all of our genetic coding. But amazing is this little powerhouse inside the cell called the mitochondria. And it also has a very specific little gene called ribosomes. And those ribosomes are actually RNA or messenger's RNA, okay? Interestingly enough, inside of this is the DNA, inside the big cell, nucleus. And then in here is this little RNA, which also produces proteins. But this RNA mimics single-stranded RNA that comes from bacteria. Bacteria have little messenger RNA as well. And they come from the same family line. And single-stranded RNA only comes from mom. This is just something I have to throw out, because when I was in a genetics class at BYU, they actually had found this little neat thing about, uniqueness about mitochondria, that it only comes from mom, and you can actually trace it all the way back to Mother Eve.
Wow.
It's fascinating. Inside the cell, all right? And this little powerhouse. And that all comes from mom. I think it's fascinating. Anyway, this little cell organelle has the ability to produce energy, and in it, remember way back now when we studied what was called the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle? Anybody recall that? Vaguely? No problem. In biology, once we studied this. And in this, it's pretty important. In this actually has what we call a cascade of breakdown byproducts that produce the energy. All right? And what we found in studying this is there are several little steps that are taken, and along the way, each one of those steps has a primary cofactor that aids it in its ability to function more optimally. All right? You're probably familiar with some of those. So when we talk about supplementation for energy, we're really talking about one primary supplement that a lot of you are familiar with. Any of you ever seen that name? Coenzyme Q10. We just abbreviate it CoQ10. CoQ10, ubiquinone, is one of the cascade steps that produce energy in the mitochondria for the body. And it actually aids then. Has anybody used CoQ10 in the past or had a use for it? Yeah? What have you used it for? What is the research, or what is it proposed as a tablet? Yes. So heart muscle. How much does the heart contract? A lot, right? I don't know all the statistics of the averages, but imagine that in our body are 8 pints of blood, and all of those are being pumped through that amazing organ, the heart. And we don't even have to think, pump, 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 pump. It does it automatically, right? And the more efficiently it does it, the more efficiently our body then is able to produce energy and get out the waste. So CoQ10 becomes one of those for heart function. What else is CoQ10 known for? Brain. So again, our brain is only 5% of our body's mass, and yet it uses 20% of our body's oxygen consumption a day. Fascinating, okay? No wonder when the brain has impaired blood supply, it quickly has a demise, right? Baby with the cord strangled around its neck quickly has a cerebral demise. A person who has hypoxia, who drowns, who's suffocated for some reason, quickly we see a demise. Somebody who's had a bleed in the brain, quickly you see the effects of that, right? We call it a stroke, so that posturing happens very quickly. CoQ10 then for brain, absolutely. In the research, they've actually done some studies on CoQ10 and patients who are on kidney dialysis, and with 100 milligrams of CoQ10 twice a day, they were actually able to take people off of dialysis. That's people who've actually experienced renal failure, and they're able to heal. Okay? So again, in my opinion, absolutely fascinating. CoQ10. When we look at mitochondrial function, though, there are several other cofactors that are very, very important. Alpha-ketoglutarate, N-acetylcysteine, acetyl L-carnitine, all very important metabolite or metabolic pathway steps that can be utilized and are essential in liver. Remember, liver is the most important organ south of the area of foramen magnum. Foramen magnum is that large hole. If foramen is a hole, and magnum is large. Okay, large hole in the base of the skull is where the brain stem comes through, the spinal cord. And everything south of foramen magnum is completely dependent on liver, as is everything north of that area. And so when we look at it, CoQ10 with the other cofactors, very, very important. So alpha-ketoglutarate and acetylcysteine. I'll just actually put a little supplement by Apex called NeuroPTX. It has all of those in it. Okay? If we look at this then, if the body's breaking down proteins quickly, what are proteins made of? What are the building blocks of proteins?
Amino acids.
Amino acids, thank you. So we love to recommend a supplement called amino acid quicksorb. Some of you have used amino acids after marathons. or during marathons, or mountain biking or hiking. Amino acid quicksorb is an excellent source of the building blocks of proteins. And I'll pass this around. We love to use this one also for children with neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism and attention deficit, because of its ability to quickly strengthen. And this is the NeuroPTX. I'll just pass that one around. You can read that little list on there and get acquainted with some of those little names. Okay? Very important for liver, very important for the mitochondria in the liver, and very important, therefore, creating energy that's going to be delivered back to brain. Okay? I want to just talk about two other things. When we talk about energy coming in, what do you remember that's unique about human cells or animal cells versus plant cells and single-celled organisms, bacteria? What's unique about the cell membrane of humans and upper species? Remember, plants have cell walls. Okay? So they actually have almost like an exoskeleton. That's that fibrous tissue that's undigestible. We don't have cell walls. So what keeps the shape of the cell or the cell membrane in upper organisms is what we call a phospholipid bilayer. Okay? So lipids are fats, and it's a phosphorylated lipid bilayer that has this head with a tail inside that creates for us then a membrane that has a water-loving side and a water-fearing side. It's charged. And by having that charge, instead of a cell wall, it actually has little studs that go in between these phospholipids that are like studs under the sheetrock that give form to a house. All right? And these aren't made of wood. These are actually made of, remember from some of our past lessons, cholesterol is actually what makes up the form or sustains the form of the cell membrane. So when we start to use different cholesterol-lowering drugs or even red rice yeast extracts, and we start to unselectively pull cholesterol out of the body, what is one of the leading side effects of cholesterol-lowering drugs or even cholesterol-lowering supplements?
Destroy the cell.
Say it again.
Destroy the cell.
Destroy the cell so it manifests as pain, right? And so one of the main things I'll say is low back pain, leg ache, muscle ache and cramp, because this cell membrane becomes inefficient when you unselectively pluck cholesterol from the cell. Okay? And long term is demise of brain, because brain is 70% fat. Parkinsonism. All right? So you're exactly right when you say that. Parkinson's disease is the #1 long-term side effect, according to Dr. David Perlmutter, the medical neurologist from Florida, who actually studies those diseases. He says when we use statin drugs, we are unselectively destroying or drawing these cholesterol and fat tissues from the body, and now what do we end up seeing? Neurodegeneration. So dementias, Alzheimer's, and Parkinsonism. Right? That's not good. So when we look at cholesterol then, what role does it play in metabolism? An essential role. Because if that cholesterol framework is no longer there for the cell collapses on itself, and now it doesn't even matter if the nucleus is present or not. The cell is dying. All right? So we need to look at how do we maintain cholesterol levels. Good fats are essential for metabolism. What are some sources of good fat? Avocado. Excellent. Okay? What else? Salmon, the fish oils. So cold water fish oils. So that includes salmon. It includes cod liver. Krill. Yes. And also mackerel and some of the sardine oils that they use as fish body oils, including anchovies. They have some really good results with those. Okay. How about coconut oil? Remember, we've talked about the benefits of coconut oil. Coconut oil actually activates the brain's utilization of alpha-synuclein proteins, which are